Hi, everyone. Take a look down below. See the subscribe button? Go ahead and click it for me. Thank you so much for your support. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Shannon Confidential. I am Shannon, your host, and Shannon Confidential is a podcast about life, love, and everything in between. And today's in between is going to be very, let's just say, inspiring. It's John Krotec, and he has several things that he's doing. But one thing, the first thing we're going to talk about today is the Poetic Human project. Now, you're going to get so much from this guy. He's military. He's had his apocalyptic moment, as he calls it. He's been down and he brought himself back up. His story is so inspiring. And not only did he bring himself back up, he thought, let me bring people back up with me. He's just so inspirational. I'm going to let you get into it with him. He's got so much to say. He's got a podcast. He's a poet. He's got groups for men to try to inspire them to bring back the leadership in America. He really has a lot to say, and you're going to get a lot out of this today. So I can't wait for you to meet John Krotec. Okay, here he is, John Krotec. Now I'm telling you, this man has the most inspirational story. I couldn't stop talking with him. Our intro call was one of the best ones I've ever had. And now you all get to meet him. So John, welcome to Shannon Confidential.
Hey, Shannon, you make me feel like, not $1 million, like 10 million bucks. And I'm grateful to be here and blessed that we met up and I'm here on your show today. So thank you. And to the listeners out there, thanks for being here too.
Thank you. Thank you. Now I've told them your story is so inspirational. I know it's deeply personal. I only ask you to share what you're willing to share. But if you could tell people, start with you have an incredible military background, and then sometimes life just sucker punches you. So go ahead.
Well, it does. And thank you, Shannon, for giving me the opportunity. I thought I knew it all, right? And you hear the Beatles song, The Long and Winding Road. Well, it's kind of like a mantra, anthem, ballad song for all of us. We all have these stories. And I'm not joking. I did think that I knew everything. I had a great business going. My wife and I were business partners. 2 kids had made it through college, were off on their own. And I was just rolling along. And then I had an apocalyptic moment. And it just shattered me. My wife had left to leave the state of Florida, which was where I was at then, and to take care or to go on a vacation. And then my best friend's wife had flown to Peru. And so we were like guys, friends, and let's go out and have a little bit of fun. And fun to me is like being home before 11 o'clock and maybe shooting a game of pool, right? Mm-hmm. So we headed out and we shot a couple of games of pool. And then I looked at my watch and I said, holy cow, it's 11 o'clock. I got to get home. So we did the chest bump. He went one way, I went my way. And the next thing I remember, I was standing on the side of a road. I'd been in an accident and I had a huge hematoma starting to form on my face. The impact was so tough that it had ripped the watch off my wrist. And I honestly didn't know what happened. I only had 2 glasses of wine the entire couple of hours we were out. And I went back to get the receipt a few days later, and I'd actually ordered water in between. So it wasn't a matter of I didn't think that it was, alcohol that caused the accident. But anyhow, I remember bits and pieces of the accident. And the next morning I find myself in a hospital with a pounding headache, and I was all monitored up, and I don't even know how I got there. Don't even remember how I got there, but I do know that I was anxious and I was in crisis already. I could tell something wasn't right. Of course, I didn't know what a traumatic brain injury was. I was soon to find out. Called my buddy. He came to pick me up. Couldn't believe it. And then
you're in Florida.
She was in Virginia at the time.
Okay, Virginia. Okay. So she wasn't near you.
It wasn't even near me. You're right. And so I looked at my wallet, right? I had my wallet. All my credit cards were missing, which was unusual. And then I had a ticket in there for careless driving. And I was like, really? I don't have my truck and I've got a ticket for careless driving. I remember vague snippets of an accident. What's up with this? So I called my wife, told her I'd been in an accident, told her I'd been ticketed for careless driving, and she was just thankful that I wasn't hurt.
But you're alive.
You're right, and but I was, and I didn't really realize what was happening to me, but I immediately was starting to have erratic mood swings. The anger and the resentment were incredible. I mean, I've never suffered from insomnia, and I was getting up at all hours of the morning. Thank God she was out of town at the time, but something was different.
Well, when you
I
were
was
all looked up and monitored, did they say you had a traumatic brain injury, or did you not even know yet?
I didn't even know yet. They hadn't told me anything. They were just checking the heart and those kinds of things.
Okay.
But the minute I took that off, they were all in the room, and I was released. A bag full of stuff, and I was in a gown and all that stuff that you get at the hospital. But so I had plans to meet my wife within 10 days at a property that we had in North Carolina, a family property, but I was literally starting to go bonkers inside, and I couldn't put a handle on it. So let me speed real quick. So we met up. I found out a few days later that I had been involved in an accident where I had rear-ended somebody. Don't even remember it. Thank God they weren't hurt. And I had basically just trashed the front end of my car. And that was it. So I couldn't even tell my wife what was going on inside, but I was embarrassed about the accident. And I felt like I had really messed up. And again, here I was doing something ridiculous in life again, right? We can talk about that. But so the mood swings, the insomnia, everything started to get worse and worse and worse. Friends were starting to alienate me, move away from me. My wife did not like being around me. I wasn't physically abusive, but I was definitely not John. And
Probably
I
a
was
lot of anger, frustration,
just resentment at the world. And I had mentioned at the outset of your show, Shannon, that we were business partners. Well, within very short order, I could tell she did not want to work with me, and I did not want to work with her. And in my angst and in my resentment, I told her I didn't want to be married anymore. The reality was that I didn't think she'd want to be with a guy like me. And I really couldn't we had been together 25 years, and I was ready to just end it. I was ready to take away me, the nightmare, away from her. And so we got into this divorce proceeding. And for those of you who have been divorced, you know what I'm talking about. It was not nice. It was not fun. I kept thinking through the whole time through it, the few weeks we were doing it, that, what am I doing this for? But I was going through with it. Anyhow, so it forced the sale of our company, our small business that we had been very successful at that time for 23 years. Only 1 year we were not profitable. And that crushed me a little bit even more. A lot of times men's egos are tied to the jobs that they do. And so that crushed me even more. And so we sold the business, and then the universe does what it always does. It gives us great gifts. And this was not necessarily a gift to my wife, but her mom slipped and fell. She was in Virginia, and my wife had to separate from me during the Christmas holiday season and go up there and be a caretaker for her mother, right in the middle of this nasty divorce. I literally was sitting at home during the holiday season wondering, what am I going to do? And I kept looking at myself in the mirror, and this is just nuts. I'd get up at 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, pace the house, flick on every light, and then in a stroke of brilliance, I decided, I don't want to, I'm 50 at that time, 53, 54 years old. I don't want to start over. So I decided I was going to drive my truck up to Virginia from Florida and surprise my wife on Christmas Day at her childhood home. Great idea, right?
Sounds wonderful.
Yeah, so I drive all the way up there. It's a 14-hour drive from where we were at on the west coast of Florida, and I checked in that night to a hotel room, and then on Christmas Day 2015, I knocked on the door, and I could tell that she was not that thrilled to see me, and she was like, "Come on in." We spoke very briefly. I might have been there 30 minutes. And she said, "There's nothing you can do to help me here. Why don't you just go home?" And the way the conversation came off was, pack your bags. We're going through with it. You know, where you made your bed basically. And she's not that kind of a person, but that was what I inferred. So I hopped back in my truck, drove all the way to Jacksonville from the Richmond area, checked into a room on Christmas Day of 2015, and spent that night pacing my room. No sleep, zero time sleeping. And the next morning, day after Christmas, I get up and it's only the lady working in the kitchen there in the restaurant of the hotel. And it was a Holiday Inn Express, right? So I had a free breakfast coming to me, and it was just her and me. And then and I was down the road, and I really did not feel. I got to tell you, Shannon, it's a very interesting thing. I'd never thought about taking my own life, but that's how I felt. Why do I want to be here? She can have it all. I really don't, need to start over at this stage of the game. And so something kept whispered in my ear, call a crisis hotline. Call somebody, John. You need to talk to someone. And so I Googled crisis centers, and something came out of Orlando, and I called it. And
thank God. Interestingly
enough, those people are those people at the end of those crisis center hotlines. They know what they're doing, and I extend gratitude for all of them, because this young person, this lady, literally talked me off the ledge. And what she told me was this, and she was very succinct. She said, "We can't save your marriage, but we can save you."
Oh.
And the way she made me feel, for the first time in my life, I felt like somebody really cared.
Wow.
So within 24 hours, I reached out to a one-on-one therapy counseling center, and I started what they call cognitive behavioral therapy. And my counselor, God bless her, she was awesome. She told me the same thing straight up. "We cannot save your marriage, but we can save you." And she said, for all intents and purposes, you have to let your wife go. You just have to let her go. So
gut-wrenching.
Yeah. And so, but what was even more interesting was what came out and what the cause of the anger and resentment really was. And what I had been stuffing for over 4 decades was a childhood sexual assault that had happened to me between the 3rd and 4th grades of elementary school. And I had stuffed that, had never told any, thank you. I had never told anybody about it. I mean, and that's what happens to a lot of children who are abused, especially the boys, because it's degrading, it's dirty, and it makes you feel like you're not even human anymore. And for anybody to go through that at any age, male, female, it's just not a good place. And so I had always just never really thought about it. But the brain injury, which I found out that I had after CAT scans and MRIs, had started to shake loose these demons. And so I started the one-on-one therapy, and I was still in contact with my wife, but it wasn't how it had been. I was manic at first before I got into therapy, where I text her and I wanted to, the worst time of her life with her mom not doing well. And here I am being an idiot, wanting a divorce. So I start, 3 weeks into my therapy, 3rd or 4th session, my therapist is looking at me and smiling, and she said, I asked her, what's up? Have I done something wrong? Which is something that we always do when we feel less than, we blame ourselves. But she says, no, she says, you make me happy because you were really you're doing the homework. You're
Have to
doing what, yes, and you're doing what you have to do to get better. So we'll speed up a little bit. So perhaps the biggest thing that turned me around next to the card that I got in the mail Thanksgiving was something that she asked me to do whenever I got up from my insomnia. And I mentioned that I'd get up and I'd turn on every light and I'd go around and I would just stomp around the house. But what I did, she said, go into the bathroom or wherever you have a large mirror and turn it on, the light, and tell that person how much you love them and how much you care about them. Just try that. That very same night after she gave me that tip, of course, I was up at 1 or 1:30 in the morning and I did what she asked me to do. And I went in there and I looked at the guy and I actually, Shane, I'm not kidding you. I looked around because I had never said anything like that to myself to see if there was anybody there. Right. So I look at myself, I said, I love you. And that was it. I went back to bed, tossed and turned. But what I started to see happening was as the days progressed and as I started dealing with the insomnia, I'd go in and I'd say, hey, John, I love you, man. You are an awesome dude. And so I started to really change the way I felt about myself. It sounds simpleton, but it was starting to change my mindset to appreciate who I was. But the real coup d'etat came when a couple of days before Thanksgiving, I got a card from my wife, Thanksgiving card, right? And I was all by myself at my house and opened it up and read it. And it went something like this: Dear John. And it wasn't the Dear John letter that we get sometimes.
Go 2 ways with this.
Exactly. So she said to me, wrote to me, I want to let you know that I spoke this week with my attorney and I have decided that I'm going to call the divorce off because I have seen a change in you. Oh. And I want to spend the rest of my life with you. And it was just incredible. I of course nobody was there, like I said, and I fell to my knees and I literally cried my eyes out. I for the first time in my life, all the awards in the military and all the community awards and business success, nothing meant more to me than that card. I felt like I had earned back the love and the respect of a woman who I had literally put through the ringer.
That's so beautiful.
Oh gosh, it was, and then thus began the journey of rebuilding a marriage and a relationship and my life again. And probably one of the most challenging things that I think anybody can do.
With a traumatic brain injury, you're doing all of this.
Oh yeah, and that's another side of the story with how I got through that. But you know, I was having a hard time even putting together 2 or 3 sentences, and I went through a little bit of speech pathology stuff, but I was able to finally, through meditation and interestingly enough, plant medicines to calm the soul and to focus and get my life back on track. But the reinvention started, I guess we're always kind of reinventing who we are, but that was a major hurdle to get through, was a traumatic brain injury, a near divorce, and thoughts and feelings of suicide. I mean, and
that's like a trifecta.
Yeah. And isn't the universe and God great, right?
Yes.
So often we find ourselves in these dark holes and we don't know how to get out of them. And I learned firsthand that there are people out there that are genuine in their concern for us as human beings. And if you reach out to them, amazing things can happen in your life. So, you know, the relationship is still a work in progress. You know, we just recently moved to Virginia from Florida, and it's kind of like relationships are the same. There's 2 different sides to that coin of relationships. There's perfection and then there's imperfection. And every time we flip the coin, we don't know what we're going to get, but it's the same coin we call relationships. And you just stick with it. You keep flipping the coin and you understand that mistakes are going to be made, but you also understand there's some real high summits in there. And we need to learn to, I had to learn to just moderate my thoughts and feelings, and to watch what I say to people, and to be very focused and heart-centered love, not the kind of love that the world embraces. It's more of a divine love where you actually feel for yourself first. And then when you can care about who you are and love who you are, the aura just explodes.
I am such a believer in that. So many people look at that and they say, oh, I don't want to put myself first. They think it's selfish. No, you are such a better person for everyone around you when you do put yourself first. And so many people, I don't know why so many people have a hard time with that, but you nailed it.
Well, thank you. And I kind of have an idea, and it's one of the things that I'm working on now with the Poetic Human. We'll talk a little bit about that, but we're raised in societies all over the world, different people, different countries, different ways of doing things. And we're taught coming along certain things that may or may not be true. And, if a parent scolds you, 5 years old and says, don't be selfish, sometimes that can stick with you your entire life. If you're going to be selfish, and Shannon you just alluded to it, if you're going to be selfish with loving yourself first. And it's not narcissism. That's another concept. And it's not arrogance.
No.
And it's not unreality. Until you can look at your own value or understand your own value, there's no way you're ever going to move forward with anything. It might appear good on the outside, but I can assure you, after having been there in that dark place, that it doesn't feel good.
No, because you know what's going on. People can't see it, but you know that chaos that's going on upstairs.
You do. And it's what happened with me. I was always real confident. I was a hard charger, mission oriented in the military. I was a high altitude climber for 10 years, always advancing, always moving forward, always crushing the competition. That's another story. And any challenge that came up, there's no way I'm going to fail. But we've heard the word sabotage, always get there. And then on the flip side, the side you don't see, you see overspending. Like my wife would say, where did you get this jacket? Oh, that came in the mail 6 months ago. You haven't seen it. It's been hanging in the closet. Or, there's little things like overspending and not necessarily being deceptive, and doing things that aren't on its face aren't really necessarily bad things, but accumulated over time, it's a form of self-sabotage. This cat and mouse game. What can I get away with? And fooling others, is really fooling yourself. And so that would always happen. It was always this months and months and months of great success. And then, like I said, I'd go on and I'd have a couple of glasses of wine, and look what happens. My whole life gets altered. So and now this time with the brain injury that will never go away. It doesn't get any better. It just gets different because we learn ways to cope with injuries like that. So, even the drugs that they gave me, the pharmaceutical prescriptions to calm my insomnia didn't work, made me even worse. And not to say they don't work for some people, but they didn't work for me. And then the plant medicines that I mentioned, primarily CBDs, cannabidiols. I don't use them anymore. I only use them through that therapy time to slow the mind down and to get the rest, get rest so the brain can heal. But that's kind of, my main story. And I've done so much and been blessed with so many things that I found out recently. I just said this to my wife. You know what I think my main issue was? She's looking at me. She never knows what's going to come out of her mouth.
She's like, wow.
And we've heard this, and it's not cliche. I said, I took everything in my life for granted. I just expected to always either get out of trouble or to have success. There was never any thought in my mind of failure in anything until I had that accident and I had a brain injury. And then I felt like the biggest failure on the planet. And it didn't feel good. I didn't have the coping skills, even in my mid-50s, to even deal with it. But things are better now. I'm on your show. I mean, come on. how much better can I be? And
Thank you.
well, you're welcome. And now on a mission to help others, primarily men.
This is
Yeah.
and this is the part that I just, all right, I'm just going to let you roll with it. And it's the group, it's the Poetic Human Project.
Oh, Poetic Human. I just launched it really 10 days ago.
This
you
is
know, well, thank you. And thank you for allowing me the opportunity to talk a little bit about it. But you know, all we have to do is look around. Everywhere these days, there's conflict, there's chaos, there's disorder, and everywhere. It's everywhere, you know, radio, television, podcasts, news stories. And to me, I believe that it's a breakdown in leadership and primarily male leadership. And it has its roots. I mean, even the statistics, male depression globally is up 69%. The UN says we've entered a new age of violence and conflict. There's so many things that are going on out there these days that are just reflective or indicative of something more than just politics. And this isn't about politics or any of that bias. This is about humanity. This is about the human condition. And so through my own research, I saw where leadership models and stereotyping really began probably in the industrial age. And what happened during the industrial age, we moved primarily from agrarian to industrial and now technical or digital. And leadership became more top down. The wealth rose to the top. The power was in it was in the hands of a few. And so we have these knuckle dragging modus operandi that guys find themselves in. We're always having to prove, you know, our manhood. And that's just the way it is. You have men, you have women, males dominate, and it's never going to be any other way. And so couple that with the emasculation of men over a period of time, and then you get to a crisis time. And that's where we're at right now. I believe that we are in the throes of a male leadership crisis. I believe it has its roots in stereotypes. It has its dilemma in emasculation, and it has its solutions in each and every one of us, the men and the women. Okay. And so that's, you know, it's not entirely our fault. You know, we had to have civil societies in order to survive. Yes. And so, but that being said, what we've really been battling, and this is where I bring science into it, the law of thermodynamics. And it's like, well, what does male leadership have to do with thermodynamics? Well, thermodynamics, the second law especially, is what basically operates the entire universe. And in a nutshell, what it says, or what it postulates, is that the universe is in a constant state of entropy or disorder and chaos. And it's a constant uphill struggle for humankind, especially, to battle those forces. So okay. It's nobody's fault. It's just the way the universe works. Well, I contend that if hatred is the entropic force of the universe, which we see everywhere, I contend that love is the positive force for growth that will combat those negative forces of the universe. I remember a really close business lady friend who told me, and actually gave me a book that I sent to my wife. And she looked at me one day, I was in her office, and she knew the troubles I was going through. And she said to me, it's a very nice person, love this person. She says, John, love conquers everything. And, you know, we've heard that so many times in our life. And take this book, send it to your wife. It was one of the books that I'd sent when we were separated, and my wife, it resonated. And my wife told me later on that what she saw, the change that she saw in me, was a shift towards authentic self-love, forgiveness too. And it was palpable. She could feel it. And she knew that I was making a serious effort to save myself and, in essence, save our marriage. And so, to come back around to Poetic Human. So Poetic Human is a male leadership initiative where I'm working on some curricula. I have a TEDx plan where we empower men with some habits that can literally turn their lives around. And it is not egocentric. It's not political. Like I said, it is entirely individual motivated. And if men truly embrace or desire to change, they can do it. And I got to tell you, Shannon, I am absolute living proof that you can be at the lowest place in your life and you can turn it around.
You have to want it.
That's the very first thing. You have to want it. You have to have the desire to change. And then part of one of the habits is to watch phraseology. So I don't say things, or I try not to say things like, it's tough, it's hard. No, it's not. It's easy. It's easy if you have the desire. And so
for this group, is this it sounds remarkable and positive and so inspirational. Is this an in-person? Is it online?
Well, you can go to,
people are going to go, okay, how do I get involved?
Well, you can go to the website. Being involved right now is really just subscribing to the website. You know,
which
John
I'll link up to everybody.
Yeah. It's just to go there. There's I do have a couple of books that I've published that are focused on poetry. Poetic Human is not poetry. It's something deeper. It's more of a higher consciousness. But, you know, I'm working on some other tools. I'm working on a curricula for higher education that can help men out of their dark places. But that's all that it is right now. It's really just an initiative. Just subscribe and say, I want to be part of that. And as we develop the tools, it was a silent launch, like I said, just 10 days ago. As we move forward, we'll have things like, you know, the newsletters that everybody has these days. Well, this one will be one that's informative. I'm working on an online writing workshop for men called Heart Scribes. And Heart Scribes will launch very soon. They have the option of not being published or being published. And at the end of every Heart Scribes workshop, we'll do a published book, poetry based on who, what, where, why, when, and how. I won't give it all away, but that's set to launch pretty soon. And then eventually what I'd like to do is literally this group of people and myself with women involved. I would like to, you know, we've heard of paradigm shifts.
Mm-hmm.
I literally would like to be part of a paradigm shift for male leadership that can make the world. I think we have this phenomenal opportunity now in light of what's going on, but to make the world so much better than it has been of late. It's not a pipe dream. I've seen it in my own life. If we together as a collective, and that word has different meanings for people, but as a group, a solidified group with a serious purpose and calling, imagine if we had 100 million people across the globe, men, decide that they were going to change the way they did things. They weren't going to be motivated by power and this power over others, but they were going to be motivated by developing the powers within, centered in love, which really is, it's leadership, learning, and liberty. Part of my triangle, liberty being freedom to be who we are, to answer our own calling in life, and to not dominate or try to be agenda or motive driven 24/7, 365. Why not be?
That's such a key right there, because there's so much agenda driven, whether it be greed, power, what have you. That agenda driven mentality is crushing.
One of my mentors, who's a Vietnam veteran, he was a combat engineer, and before I moved, we were playing guitar, you know, a couple times a week together. It was part of the therapy, that music therapy. But he said, you know, he was the one that we had a lot of deep talks, and he was the one that inspired me in part to take a different look and to go in deeper and to actually find out what made me tick. I mean, it was a combination of a lot of different things, But you would look at this guy and you would never think, with his hair in a ponytail, gray hair, and you would think that he was somebody different than he is. But again, another man that had not necessarily the same story, but after Vietnam had a bout with alcohol, and it had cost him several relationships and a marriage. And I was able to, through my own therapy and listening to him and playing guitar, formulate some of the ideas that I have, because he's an engineer, and he was the one that taught me about the science of thermodynamics. And I never knew anything about it. And so, I credit him with some of my inspiration. But we get inspiration from so many different places. And just imagine, and you said it earlier, Shannon, if you have the desire to change, you can.
Yeah. And the change, and it's immediate. The second you change that mindset, I don't care what you're doing in life, competing. And when I say like sports, competing, working, home, kids, family, friends, your mindset is the beginning of it all. And if you have the right mindset, it is just about instantaneous. The universe changes for you. That's saying everything's wonderful and, cue the deer and, there's butterflies everywhere, but it changes. Your mindset should be the number one first thing you do, and the world will follow.
You're totally right. 1,000% right. It is all mindset. And sometimes we've been beaten down so many times, we don't think that we have value, or we don't think that we have the skill sets or the tools to make a change and to influence the world like that. And we do. And that is the empowering part of what the Poetic Human really is. I mean, we have 10 habits that we talk about that I've researched thoroughly, and their impact on the human psyche, and how they literally can be instantaneous. But that being said, one thing that does get people in trouble is being impatient. And so I had to rely on my climbing to go back. I had 27 summit attempts over 20,000 feet. And I had only six successful summits, because it's dangerous up there. But the Nepalese have a saying about mountaineering, right? It's called, they say, slowly, slowly. And one of the biggest things that gets people in trouble when you go through this transformative process is impatience. So I always say, trust in God, or whatever that higher power is, believe in yourself.
Yes.
And understand that it is a process, and it can be a painful process because of the time that it takes. Now I know why I wanted to mention my friend. He was the one that said, one day we're sitting there talking about social media, right? Okay. And he says, it pains me. This is a quote from him. It pains me to see grown men struggling, doing and saying things that they don't really agree with, just because they think others do. And that's what we have fallen into many times as men and as women, that we have somehow this role that we need to fulfill to be accepted or approved by everybody else around us. And that doesn't mean you just throw everybody away. You become a complete, a-hole. It just means that you have to really follow your own calling. And I'm blown away at some people who are, I call it celebrity leadership. We think that some people are there and they have great wealth. They've amassed great wealth, and they have this awesome influence over thousands, sometimes millions of people. And somehow that makes them a leader.
No.
I mean, I coined that phrase just a few days ago. I call it celebrity leadership syndrome.
It's so true.
And they don't have any leadership going on. And if you think that leadership is just as being rich and having control over others, then somehow you're not understanding the definition. Yeah.
You're just getting it wrong. You're nailing everything. And it's so refreshing to hear somebody speak honestly, to hear a man speak honestly about this. I just hope the Poetic Human just explodes all over. I hope it just spreads like wildfire, because this is so needed, so incredibly needed. And you are just so sure and confident, and that is so needed right now. And it'll help guide people, men, women, whomever, to follow that, because that's a leader. You know, you're leading by example, you're leading with confidence, you're leading through with the science. It's not just, there's no greed or agenda there. It's just, hey, feel better. I did it. It worked. Let me help you. You're very humble.
Well, thank you. And I thank you for that. It means a lot, because the agenda is the human race. And, the men out there, they are suffering, and they're tired of dragging their knuckles. And, it is time to heal. And if we can heal our souls first, and especially like as a childhood assault victim, I don't even like the word victim, survivor, overcomer, champion, winner, vanquisher, emotional injuries literally taint the human soul. And until you address those, it could be anything. It could be a divorce. It could be a disfigurement from combat. It could be sexual assault. It could be bullying from junior high school. Whatever it is that we have not addressed, until we do so, then we will always be in the cesspools of our lives. Never, spin cycles, never getting anywhere, self-sabotage, self-defeating beliefs, and we will never reach authentic and genuine fulfillment as long as we don't address our own natures and the things that have affected us in our lives to make us who we are. And I was tired of dragging knuckles and having to be Mr. Tough Guy and all of this. That's all a mask for what's really happening inside, which is called fear. And men don't want to ever admit, ever, that they're fearful. Well, I looked in the mirror one night and I said, I'm scared to death. I want to stay here. I want to live. I don't want to die.
Yeah.
You know,
And you say men don't want to say they're fearful. I don't think, and this is just coming from a woman, my perspective on it, when you have, and this goes for men, women, whatever, the longer you don't admit what you already know is going on inside of you, the longer it controls you. The second you face your fear, whatever that fear is, admitting to something, even if it's something you feel guilty about doing, as long as you admit it, acknowledge it, as long as you say, hey, I know you're there. I see you. I'm going to call you out. I'm going to call this fear out. I don't like what happened to me. I don't like this divorce. I don't like that someone touched me when I was younger. As soon as you say it, you take your control back. You are more courageous after you admit something. You are more powerful internally once you acknowledge that one fear that's been eating you up inside. That's strength. That's sexy.
Well, thank you for that. You're right, Shannon. It's so very true. Until we address that, until I said trust God, right, or the higher power, and that also means trust in yourself. And if you are constantly being affected and fearful because of the things that have happened to you, you're right. You can't get ahead. You have to be. And I remember my therapist, Cheryl, she looked at me and she said, John, the only way this is going to work is if you are brutally honest with yourself. And integrity, right? Personal integrity. But that even being said, it was realizing that the mistakes that you've made or the things that have happened, sometimes they were your fault, sometimes they weren't your fault. Realize that you have options and you have the power to choose, and that you understand this. Make a conscious effort to try to do what's right. It's not going to always work. Our intuition has been so batted out of us, or beat out of us since the beginning. As we've become more technological, more digital, intuition, we know when a bear's around, it's time to run. but sometimes we don't go with our gut feelings in a civilized world. And if we don't go with our gut feelings, it means that we're not being totally honest or integral, and things are going to continue to happen that you don't want to have happen.
Yeah.
So
Thinking again.
yeah, overthinking, and there's just so many things. You know, the first thing for the poetic human, we can talk a little bit about it.
Absolutely.
It's constantly, you know, poetic humans constantly seek self-improvement, and they do it through reading. I'm an insatiable reader. I'm not going to say if reading's not your thing, there's all kinds of online articles and things for self-improvement, workshops, podcast shows like this. You know, tune in to Shannon's and listen, because you might learn something. No, not might, you will learn something. And so poetic humans are constantly seeking self-improvement. And then that also means the physical side of things. It's not just the emotional and the mental. It's also, you got to get your body exercising somehow. I don't care if it's walking your dog, riding your bike, working out in the gym, you know, tennis, whatever you're jogging, whatever you're doing, poetic humans exercise. They exercise. So they self-improve through those things, and then they exercise. And then probably the most important thing, well, they're all important, but I always say, sit down and create a buzzword mantra. Write down the words in your life that mean something, like love, integrity, gratitude, hope, tact, you know, compassion, judicious, loyal, you know, all of the things that manifest the good side of who you are. And write them down. Write those words down. Those become your personal buzzword mantras.
I like that.
And then live and breathe them. Understand, do research on what judicial means or what compassion means. Find out what they really mean, because once you understand they're part of you and you understand the definition, you can live them more. Those are a couple of things. And then there's two things that I'll talk about real briefly. One of them is, I call, you know, we talked about these societal constructs that can get in the way. And one of them that just kills me is the back to square one belief that we all have. Right now, think about this. I started this about 2 years ago, actually 476 days ago. Right, that's the newest number. But if it had been the old methodology of always back to square one, I'd be at zero.
Wouldn't we all? Yeah.
Right. So what I always say, let's say you have something you want to transform or change. It's something that you do. You don't have to expose it to the world. Expose it to yourself in a journal, and stop doing it. Put a 1 there, right? Let's say you get to a day 11. Love that number 11. And whatever it was you wanted to stop, you did it again. Whoops, you made a mistake. Rather than start day 12 as day 1, start day 12 as day 11, right? And then, so you're not back on square one. It's a mental game that you're playing with yourself. But eventually, then you get to 47, and you do that thing that you want to change, whatever it is. Start the next day at 47, not at square one. And what will start to happen, it'll start to play on your mind, and it'll build, you mentioned confidence earlier, it'll start to make you more confident. And then you start setting goals. Well, I'm going to make it to 500. Okay, I made a couple of mistakes. I'm still at 478, but I'm at 478.
You're about to say, but you're at 478, not 1.
Not 1. That back to square one mantra or belief that we've had since forever is total and complete rubbish. And the point of that is to count your victories.
Yes.
Dwell on your strengths. Don't count your defeats or dwell on your weaknesses. So that back to square one, that's one thing that I'd say, do that. And then another one that I really love is enthusiasm. And what I've found out about enthusiasm, if you're doing what you truly are meant to do,
yes,
if you have truly answered the calling, whatever it is you do, I don't care if you're a sweeper on a sidewalk, and I've seen them down in La Paz, Bolivia, the happiest people in the world.
So true.
Sweeping a little 10 by 10 section of, and smiles on their face and just a zest for life. And I think to myself, wow, how could you be happy just sweeping off a sidewalk? The point being is if they love sweeping sidewalks. Those people are proud of that little section of the world that they have control over, whatever, So I always say, if you are truly happy, and you may not have a bubbly personality, I'm saying that rhetorically, you're still going to be enthusiastic. Try to center yourself, create a mindset of enthusiasm based on the things that you love to do.
And it will explode out of you. It's almost going to be contagious with the people around you. They will feel as much as people feel when someone's negative or catty or whatever, they will feel enthusiasm, pride, happiness, all of that just is, you could feel it. You can penetrate that when it comes across. We've all met somebody, you're laughing, contagious. Oh, I love being around you. You're so much fun. It's that positive energy that just comes off of people that you almost get empowered by it because other people want to be near that, because like you said earlier, that beat down, mentality that everybody's had for so long. When you find someone who has rid themselves of that, it's amazing to be around. Imagine if it was you.
Exactly. And thank you, Shannon, because it's called a vibrational state. And I remember that same mentor that we talked about. He says, when you walk into a room or when you meet somebody for the first time, do you want them to feel elevated and excited and inspired and motivated? Or do you want them to feel like they've been sucker punched? And this is a rhetorical thought, but how many times have you walked into a place and you ask, hey, how are you doing? Okay.
Yeah, you're just
I'm doing okay. How many people have you met like that? But imagine, how you doing? I am doing great. And it is so good to see you. How are you doing? Imagine something that simple, raising the elevation and leaving that person feeling good. Instead of, and like you just took the wind out of it. I mean, do we know people like that? Or are we like that? We're having a bad day or whatever. But I believe that. I so totally believe that, Shannon, that if we elevate and understand enthusiasm because we're doing the things we love to do, that we're a winner every time we walk in a situation and we're around people. And you said it, those are the people that you want to be around. I don't want to be around Eeyores anymore. No. If I can help an Eeyore, by all means, but Eeyore's got to be ready to have the desire to not be Eeyoring.
Yeah, you can't help anybody that's not willing to help themselves. That's just a fact. But you
could be an Eeyore.
You could try to get them when they are ready to then, support them all the way through.
Exactly. And so that's kind of where I'm at now with this life change. That sounds interesting, but this transformative place in my life. I'm 62. I'll be 63 this year. I literally feel like I'm 25 again. And thank God I have my wife with me. She is a phenomenal partner. She does so many things to help me, not only behind the scenes, and she also yanks a knot in my tail every now and then, which many times it's usually needed. So I'm just in a real good place right now, and I'm just so glad that we met on LinkedIn, which is a phenomenal platform, and be able to tell our stories. Whenever Shannon, don't underestimate what you're doing. Every time you allow people like myself to tell their story, you are creating, and it's not cliche, you're helping to create that butterfly effect. You're putting these stories out there. And so your job is as important as my job. You're the storytelling opportunity giver, so thank you.
I'm going to put that on my business card.
Yeah. And why not? Because that's what you do, and so that's what I am. I'm a poetic human. I'm a person that understands my value. I'm a person that has a purpose in life, and I've answered my calling, which for me is to help men be better leaders and to understand that no matter where they're at in their lives, they don't have to live by some stereotypical construct, but they can be who they are and be proud of it. Oh, and by the way, the new podcast show that I'm working on is called Well. It's women's expressions on leadership, learning, and liberty. And there are some women who are out there who are doing a much better job at leadership than the men. And we need to recognize exactly. No, exactly. And we men need to recognize them because we can learn from them. And that's the way the world is. The only way we're going to get through this is if we help each other.
I was going to say together is together.
Absolutely. And that's why I'm doing Well. It's a completely different female centric storytelling show too. And I'm going to do 12 interviews to start the first season, but I've got 5 already finished. And I got to tell you, I've been schooled. I have learned things from a women's perspective. And just in 5 episodes, I've learned probably more about women ever, because these ladies are leaders than ever before. And so my dream is to have men all over the planet dreaming in or tuning in, and women leaders all over the world want to be on it.
Why not?
Because
now this is a podcast, correct?
It'll be a podcast show. We'll also probably do a YouTube. So we're working on the mechanics.
But
has not gone out yet.
Okay. But it's WELL. I want people to know to watch for it.
Right. And it will be out. I think there's something on the website announcing coming soon, but I want to get the 12 interviews, and I can extend you an interview as well. And you'll be one of the first of the 12 ladies on the show, which would be awesome.
Oh, that'd be great. Thank you.
You're welcome. And so we'll talk about that, but that's coming out. And so that's where I'm at these days. I'm being a poetic human, and I want to put my dent in the world and exercise my value to help others. And I've always said that if there's, and it's not cliche, some people might be, but if we can affect one person a day, one, then we've made one person a day has made the world a better place. And that to me keeps me enthusiastic, motivates me to be even better and to continue on this journey in my own life, the long and winding road. Thank you, the Beatles. I get it now. Yeah.
Oh, your story, John, is remarkable. What you're doing. You're starting this other podcast. I know you have a podcast that you're already doing, the Straight Outta Combat. That's
Straight Outta Combat's been on hiatus this past year because of the lots of things that are going on in the rebrand of the Poetic Human. Okay. But I've got 137 interviews on that, all men and women, all branches of service, to include like Governor Ron DeSantis and General Michael Flynn and Jeanette Arancibia, phenomenal Navy commander. Their stories are just phenomenal, trying to diminish the negative stereotype of combat veterans. And then Task Force Zen probably started too soon, but I have 17 or 18 interviews on Task Force Zen, and that was a holistic healing interview podcast. People who are doing things to help others heal without labeling them. But that's something that hasn't even. That's funny because Task Force Zen is really the beginning game at the end of all of this. A holistic healing platform that I've put together, and look for that probably next year. But that's called Task Force Zen, and it is a way to.
Is this all on the website?
It will be. Task Force Zen is it's in file form on my laptop, but the idea is I've been working on it most of my life, and it's coming to fruition too. So yeah, I just want to stay busy, Rolling
I think you're going to. You got a lot coming up. You want to do TED Talks? I think you'd be fantastic at that.
Well, thank you for that. I'm working on my first one. I've got a couple in the mix, but it's the male leadership crisis and the second law of thermodynamics and how that works. And then I'm working on one, Love Doesn't Hurt, It Heals. You remember the old Nazareth song? from the 70s. It was a ballad, and it's a beautiful song, but I've got a different take on what love really does, and it doesn't hurt. Real love doesn't hurt. Real love, it heals us.
I just love everything you've said today, John.
Thank you, Shannon.
You're humble, you're honest, you're real, you're inspirational. You're a great guy.
Well, thank you. And these days I believe it. And, I appreciate that. Yeah.
Thank you. And thank you so much for just being an incredible guest on Shannon Confidential. I just honestly, sometimes I just have to pinch myself. I just like the luckiest person in the world. These incredible stories that I get and meeting you. I'm very thankful.
Well, thank you. And you know what? I'm glad you said that you used the word lucky, because there is a little bit of luck in success. And I think that we make the luck by having an integral mission. And so this is the reward that you get by having some luck, because you believe in what you're doing. And it's inspiring for me too, to know that there's people out there like yourself that care about people and allow them to tell their story. So thank you yourself for being such a fantastic person. And maybe someday we'll cross paths at a workshop or something. Who knows?
Why not?
Yeah.
Thank you so much, John.
You're welcome.